When you wake up in the morning, do you feel beat up, like you got hit by a freight train and you just want to roll over and go back to sleep? Is it hard to get through your day without a nap, drinking several cups of coffee? Do you feel like you have no energy left for your family at the end of the day? My guest understands what this is like, and he will join us shortly to talk about how you can naturally increase your energy, upgrade your fitness, and improve your quality of life. So don't go anywhere. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our proud sponsor of this episode and the Fatherhood Challenge, Ingenious Prep. Ingenious Prep is the world's premier admissions consulting firm, proud to be officially recognized as the country's top college admissions consultants, helping students prepare for admissions to top schools through individualized educational programs that increase chances of admission by up to 10 times. Ingenious Prep students work with former admission officers to differentiate themselves from other competitive students in 3 areas colleges evaluate students: in academics, extracurricular activities, and personal characteristics. Just this past admission cycle, Ingenious Prep students have secured 110 offers from Ivy League schools, 268 offers from top 20 schools, and 904 offers from top 50 schools. Ingenious Prep student success lies within the fact that Ingenious Prep is an all-in-one consulting firm offering every service a family needs, whether it be test prep, tailored candidacy building mentorship, academic mentorships, the Leadership and Innovation Lab, soft skills courses, writing courses, and other customized programs to develop their application persona to the most effective and authentic extent to share with colleges. Just click on the link in the episode description to book a free strategy call with one of Ingenious Prep's college experts, or you can visit ingeniusprep.com. That's ingeniusprep.com. and let them know you came from the Fatherhood Challenge.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. My guest is TEDx speaker, educator, and fitness expert Josh Wood. Drawing from his 15 years of experience as a competitive powerlifter and combat sports athlete, a wilderness hiking guide, and a dad, Josh has developed a holistic approach to fitness grounded solidly in the pragmatic and the natural world. Josh, welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, I gotta ask, what is your favorite dad joke?
A man is at a funeral for his best friend, and it's obviously a very somber occasion. And he steps up and asks his best friend's wife, "Hey, do you mind if I say a word?" And she's like, "Of course, you were his best friend." And so he gets up in front of everyone. He looks with great seriousness at all the crowd and the friends. And he says, "Plethora," and steps down. And with a tear in her eye, his best friend's wife says, "That means a lot."
Oh, that was good.
Thank you.
Oh, that's how I like to kick things off. Let's start with your story. How did your fitness journey begin?
So I'm 35, and my fitness journey started when I was 17, I believe. Yeah, I was 17. So I was in Rochester, Minnesota, working at a computer repair shop. And one day I'm sitting there and I'm like, I am undersized, skinny kid, eating garbage all the time. And I just had this realization, like, I don't want to be weak and scared of everything for the rest of my life. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to learn kickboxing. Because for whatever reason, that is what the first thing that came into my head was. And then I did some research and some looking around, and there was nowhere to learn kickboxing. So I was like, okay, well, that's not going to work. But then I found in Rochester, there used to be, it's closed for a bunch of years now, but an old Irish family run boxing gym that was in an old auto shop, converted auto shop to boxing gym. And in the corner of that gym, there was a Brazilian guy named Mario Roberto, and he had mats on the ground, and he had a little corner of the gym, and he taught mixed martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And I started doing that. And I mean, I'm visiting Minnesota right now. I normally live in Tasmania, and I've known Mario for 18 years. And every time I come to town, we catch up. But that's where I started my interest in health and fitness.
From there, did you feel any calling to do anything else from that? Or was that just more personally to get yourself kind of bulked up and in better shape?
Well, the bulking up didn't happen until I was in my mid to late 20s. But it was just a personal interest thing. Just like, what, I need to have some physical capacity in life. I need to not be so concerned with confrontation and doing difficult things. I needed to be tougher. I needed to have more grit, and I needed to be comfortable with physical altercation. And from that, I followed that path for a number of years, but I moved around a lot. So I did that for about a year. But that happened then. So then I went over to the UK for about 6 months, backpacking, and then came back for about 6 months and started up with a martial arts club out of the community college. And then moved to Australia and continued to train on and off as I moved around a little bit here, a little bit there. And it was all just personal interest. But after a bit, I was like, what, I want to learn more. I want to learn more about the body. And so I started pursuing a career in massage. And I learned massage and studied that and ran a clinic, like a clinic space, for maybe 7 years. I ended up working at a school in Melbourne and teaching massage for about 6 years. And while I was in this phase of everything about learning to work with the body and understand the body and treat the body, I then started studying training professionally and coaching people, because I kind of had this realization that I didn't like working in a clinical setting where people came in and they complained about what was wrong, but didn't want to do anything about it. I was like, nah, this is silly. And I found that in fitness and personal training and coaching, that people are in a better spot. They're there because they're willing to do the work to make the changes that lead to the life they want. And I liked that side of things better. And that's what I've been doing. I started coaching group classes and personal training in 2011, 2012, somewhere around there.
There are so many dads struggling with their energy levels and not having nearly enough energy to give their family the way they would like to. How did they start that change?
Oh, it's such a big one. There's one word that answers all those problems, and it's priorities.
Wow.
You have to understand your priorities, because you know what? And no one likes me to say this, because the internet's full of gurus who say you can do everything, but you can't do everything. It's impossible to do everything, and you always have to sacrifice something to do another thing. And that means you need to know where your priorities are.
The next question I really was going to ask was about work balance for career dad. How do they balance physical fitness, family, and work and do all well? But it sounds like there really isn't a way to be able to make that balance correctly.
Well, you can do it correctly, but you can't do it perfectly. So the issue is, you have to understand what has to be done now and what doesn't. And one of the big things with that is, we, depending on what season of fatherhood you're in, like I've got 2 young kids, but when they're old enough to sort of go off and do things on their own, you have more time. But when you're in the trenches with babies, you have to sleep, you have to eat well, you have to do the minimum requirement to stay functional. But you're not going to, and everyone's different, but you're probably not going to pick up a new sport when you have a newborn. You're probably not going to start training for a marathon. But if you can eat well and sleep as much as you can so you're functional and healthy, you're going to be winning. And then when time starts to open up, then you start investing more into the areas that are most important to you.
So it has to start first with your basic needs, good nutrition, eating well, water, all of those things, getting as much sleep as you possibly can. Depending on if you're in the early stages, you probably aren't getting much, but getting that figured out as best you can. And then working your way outward from there, because really it sounds like if you haven't made your own health and wellness the priority, you're not going to really have much to give your family.
Bingo. Like this is the truth of it. And, as someone who's always had too many things going on, and like I've always had a skill or athletic goal that I've been working towards. I competed in boxing for a number of years and powerlifting, and I've done a bit of strongman. And the last few years it's been traditional archery. I used to spearfish a lot. Like, I go through seasons and things that I like to do. But when you have that time, you can do that. But if you're not getting enough sleep, all that is not worth your time. If you're not eating well enough to avoid the 50 pounds that new dads tend to put on, you're not prioritizing right. And the first thing is sleep. If you're getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep a day and you're like, oh, but I'm not getting to the gym every day. It's like, yeah, well, you need to prioritize, and sleep is number one. And if you're eating garbage because you're exhausted and stressed out all the time, the gym is the least of your worries. Preparing for some sort of athletic endeavor is the least of your worries. Hit the basics first. Get your sleep right. Get your food right. Make sure you can recover. Make sure you can do what you have to do as a dad, because that's priority number one. And then you can add stuff in when you have the capacity. And if you're working a high demand job, or you're self-employed like me, you know what? That's what you need to do to take care of your family. That means that has to take priority in most cases. But you can't do that if you're not sleeping well and you're not eating well.
So it also comes back to a quality of life. If you're not healthy, if you're not where you need to be taking care of yourself, it's really hard to fully appreciate your family. I mean, if you are around your family and that's supposed to be quality time, but you feel all the time like you've been hit by a freight train, you can't really enjoy that. So that's incentive enough to want to make a big change. And sometimes that might mean pulling back on everything else to be able to get that. But man, I mean, I would ask dads listening, wouldn't you want that full experience to be present and not just feel like garbage when you're around your family?
Yeah, it's and this is coming from a guy who's always picking up too many hobbies and things to do, and has been self-employed his almost my whole adult life. It's hard when you can't be as productive as you want to be and can't be accomplishing all the things that you feel like you need to do as a man. But and this, it's taken me 2 kids to figure this out, that you have to really understand your priorities and understand that your first priority is your family, and you are going to have to take a back seat in some aspects for a little while. It's not forever, but it's for a little while.
What does good nutrition look like for a dad? Let's just say somebody that needs to make a change right now, and they're going into their next meal and they need to start now. What does that look like?
If we're getting into specifics, it would be making sure you hit your protein goals above everything else. There is no real goals for fats and carbohydrates for someone who's not athletic or someone who is not looking for high performance. Most average dads do not eat enough protein. They do not feel like they're being nourished, and they tend to then overeat garbage and snack and drink and things to make themselves feel better. But if your body is nourished, you have a lot less of those cravings. So the very first thing you should be doing is making sure at every meal you're hitting your protein requirements. And at a bare minimum, you can look at the size of your palm, so the width, height, thickness of your palm, and think, I need to have at least 1 to 2 servings of protein about the size of my palm with each meal. And when I talk about protein sources, I mean dense, lean protein sources, things like chicken, beef, fish. You could do low-fat Greek yogurt. Eggs. Eggs are a really quality protein source, but they're not a high protein source. So if you're going to use them for your protein needs, you probably need 3 to 4 at a minimum. And just focus on making sure each meal is built around hitting those minimum protein needs. Because not only does that help you feel fuller and help maintain good blood sugar levels throughout the day, but it helps you maintain lean muscle mass, which you need to be functional in life.
I know so many dads that are either type 2 or type 1 diabetic. So if we really followed a diet like this, like you just described, we could curb so many chronic illnesses that are centered around diabetes.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to caffeine. Is caffeine good or bad for fitness?
For fitness, it's great. It's one of the most researched and common drugs in the Western world. And, we've had research from almost 100 years ago on the effects of caffeine. It's a great ergogenic aid. It makes you perform better It makes you work harder. When we're talking about exercise and fitness, it's a very handy, legal, performance enhancing drug. From a health perspective, if we look at the literature, in almost every case, and I'm talking about caffeine coming from things like coffee, like there's a lot of highly sweetened garbage drinks that have caffeine, and that the effects of those are not necessarily related to the caffeine. But if we look at caffeine from coffee and caffeine in general, the people who consume coffee more up until about 4 cups a day tend to have more beneficial health outcomes than people who don't drink coffee. So we find that caffeine and things like coffee tend to be net beneficial. But there's the individual component. Do you get anxiety? Do you get the shakes, the sweats? How much are you drinking? Is it affecting your sleep? If we keep our dosages under 4 cups of coffee worth a day, or a cup or 2 in the morning, and you keep caffeine ideally at least 10 to 12 hours away from sleep, it shouldn't affect your sleep too much. And it's a net benefit, not just for health outcomes, but for performance as well. So I think it's a very useful thing. I think the literature shows that it's actually a healthful thing, as long as you don't have a poor reaction to it. Because some people are chronically anxious, and if you're stressed out and you're anxious, adding caffeine to the mix is a detriment.
The other thing is, if you have to have lots of caffeine to function in your day, you think that might be a really clear warning sign that everything else is really, really out of balance. Like, we're not talking caffeine to work out, to enhance your workout routine. This is like, I've got to have 4 to 8 cups of coffee in the morning when I get up just to function, just to be able to get going. And if I don't do that, I'm crabby and I can't focus. I'm sleepy all day. I yawn all day long. I'm just so. Is that really a warning sign?
Yeah, absolutely. There's the issue of it being, it is an addictive drug, and you become habituated to a certain amount. And if you want to feel like you used to after having a cup of coffee, you have to have 2 cups of coffee, and then you adapt and habituate to that dose, and then you have to have more. And so we do have this ramping up addictive effect of caffeine as well. But like you said, like the big thing is like, this is a warning sign of something. And you know what? If you feel like you need that all the time, it's probably because everything else in your life is falling apart and you need more sleep. And this is where we come down to priorities. It's like, you know what? If you have to get up and you've had a crappy night's sleep with a newborn baby who's keeping you both up all night, well, you know what? If you have to have 2-3 cups of coffee to get to work, get it done, it's another season in your life. You got to do what you got to do. But if you have the ability to say, not stay up late watching Netflix because that's your you time and I deserve it, and I'm doing this for me, and whatever excuses we give ourselves, if you just go to sleep earlier, and this is the thing I talk to a lot of young parents about too, is when you have babies in the house, you are not working on an 8 to 10 hour sleep schedule anymore. You're working on a 24-hour sleep schedule. So your goal for you and your partner or your wife is to get the required amount of sleep over 24 hours. If you need 8 hours to function, you might not get it all at once, but if you can take some naps, you're still going to get it. So learning how to adjust your sleep schedule and your attitude around going to bed early and around naps, you're going to deal with a lot of those issues better. So, like I always say, you're an adult, take a nap. You can do that. Find a time to take a nap, find a time or try to get to bed earlier. If you know you have to get up at 5, don't stay up till 10:30 watching TV. If the kids are in bed, if the baby's asleep, you go to sleep.
That's great advice. I've heard the whole sleep thing described as like a bank, and it completely changed the way I thought of sleep. I thought of sleep as this. So if you only get 4 hours of sleep, well, that's it. Once you're up, there is no making that up. It's gone. And so your only way of recovering whatever you lost from that is by the next night getting a full 8 hours. So what you're saying is, if you only get 4 hours, you only get 4 hours, but at some point during the day, if you have 3 hours to go and take a 3-hour nap, that may not be realistic, or maybe you break it up into 2 hours here, 1 hour there. That still counts towards your 8 hours.
Absolutely. It's not ideal because sleeping consistently for a longer period of time tends to be better. But this is actually something that we see in how professional athletes manage their recovery. If we look at what athletes needing, so high level athletes typically need around 10 hours of sleep a day, but they're busy too. They might have night games, they might have early morning games, they have travel and stuff like that. So the idea is to always get their 10 hours approximate sleep across the day. So they might be sleeping on the bus or on a plane or taking a nap before they go to training, that kind of thing. It's on a 24-hour schedule. And if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. And it might help to reframe it in terms of, you know what, treat yourself like a professional athlete.
So for that person that really has trouble getting to sleep, they're anxious, their mind won't shut off, they're just fidgety, they just can't get settled in and get to sleep quickly, or when they get to sleep, they're up maybe once or twice during the night. Is that often a sign that they're not getting enough exercise, and can exercise fix a lot of those symptoms?
Can be. So it could be an exercise thing in that they're not actually inducing enough fatigue across the day. But it could also have to do, with life stresses, but also sleep hygiene. If you've spent the last hour before bed staring at your phone, that blue light continues to stimulate the production of cortisol, which is the hormone that wakes you up. Sleep hygiene and the systems you have around going to bed will affect not just how long it takes to fall asleep, but your quality of sleep. Caffeine. Some people are like, I could drink a cup of coffee before bed and go to sleep. It's like, cool, you can fall asleep. But everything we know about how caffeine affects sleep tells us that it decreases the depth and quality of sleep, even if you're technically asleep. So you're having a poorer sleep, even if the length is the same. By having caffeine before bed, you have a harder time getting to sleep if you've been exposed to a lot of stimulating things like blue light coming from screens or like stimulating TVs and movies and things like that. So having a system of reducing exposure to blue light, keeping less lights on, using warmer tones to your lights, reducing screen time within the hour before bed, maybe not eating a whole lot before you go to sleep, keeping your caffeine 12 hours away from your normal bedtime, like all those things come into how well and what the quality of your sleep is.
So we're having a discussion. The general theme is fitness. I never expected to spend a good portion of this conversation around sleep, which just that by itself should say everything we need to know about how important sleep is to your health, why it matters so much. So let's go out and look at it a broader perspective of things. So from what I've understood about fitness, there's three components to it. There's a physical, there's a mental, and there's also a spiritual component to all of this. What does that look like when they're all in harmony, and why are all of those important for dads?
That's an interesting one. So a lot of people just do exercise because it's good for them. But if you're finding, and this is what I say to people a lot, and new clients and things like that, is the best workout you do is the one that you do, the one that you can continue to do for a while. It's not about the perfect, optimal session in the gym. It's about what can you do forever. And I think when you find a style of movement that you enjoy, that is physically rewarding, that keeps you mentally stimulated, but also, also fulfills that aspect that brings you joy. A lot of times it's things like martial arts or yoga, things that cover all those bases. Find something that you enjoy and is stimulating and gives you the physical benefits, and you put all those pieces together, you're going to do it forever. And the most important thing you can do is stay moving forever.
That's a completely different take on fitness. I think a lot of dads are scared, or maybe not scared is the word, but they are just anxious about getting started because they think that on day one, they have to bleed in the gym. I mean, they have to really just they have to get shredded in a month. And if they aren't seeing that kind of results in a month, well, they're not working hard enough. And they're like, I just got off the couch. How am I supposed to bulk up like that? And you're saying physical fitness is not limited to just bulking up. It's a matter of getting off the couch and just getting moving, doing something.
Most average men don't need to bulk up. They have too much bulk as it is. And this is a discussion I have with a lot of new clients too is if you've spent the last 20 years doing nothing and adding non-functional weight to your body, you're going to probably need 6 months to a year for each year that you've been sedentary to reverse it. Like, this is not a quick fix situation. You spent 20 years putting yourself in this state. How do you think it's just going to disappear in a month or 6 months or even a year? That's absurd. And what I usually start people with is, and this might be, might blow some minds here. It's pretty cutting edge stuff. But when I get people that have been sedentary for a long time, the very first thing we focus on is walking. If you're not walking, there's nothing I can do for you. Like, it's the most basic form and easiest and healthiest form of exercise you can do is walking. And if we can get people hitting, and step count is a pretty popular way of looking at this because it's easy to measure. But if we can get people moving more regularly every day, weight's just going to fall off. They're going to feel so much better. And then we focus on building the body and building the strength and building the physique that people want. But if you just go into the gym, and like you said, a lot of people go in and they smash themselves and they just burn themselves out on their first session, that's how often can they do that? Not often. Most people do that and they're sore for 2 weeks and they come back 2 weeks later and they're sore for 2 weeks. And it's just not a productive or sustainable system. I'd rather have someone go in at 50% effort 2, 3, or 4 times a week and do that consistently, because you will get better results. If you're working at 100% once every 2 weeks, that's only like a 50% effort averaged across those weeks. But if I get you in going 50% 4 times a week, where you're not hammered, where you're not broken after every session, well, 50% 4 times a week is 200%. That's a much bigger amount of total work and potential gains across time than just going in and hammering yourself.
I know for me, this would be something that would be, you might be able to outline it for me on paper or whatever, but I would get much better results from actually having a coach, having someone guide me through exactly how do I do this. And I think there is a vital accountability component that a lot of people starting a workout routine or regimen absolutely need. So this goes into my next question. I mean, how can a dad get a hold of you for help or coaching or to learn more about what you're doing?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. So because I work with a lot of men and dads, the number one issue we get into is, as guys, we think we can figure everything out and do everything on our own. But I know a lot of guys in their 40s and 50s who've been saying that for 20 plus years and just happen to be getting worse every year. The issue is accountability. Someone to not just give you the plan, give you the answers to the questions that you have, but keep you on track in the long run. And that's so important. So if anyone is interested and can contact, my website is strongforlife.online. My business is Strong for Life Online Coaching. I work with people all over the world, US, Canada, Indonesia, India, Europe. I've got guys in Ireland, New Zealand, Australia, like everywhere, because with online coaching, it doesn't matter where you are. So strongforlife.online. If you have questions, I've got a lot of free resources. I've got a guide on there that's just about going to the gym for the first time. It's called the Beginner Gym Guide. That's a free thing. I've got my Eat Like an Adult guide. Learn the basics of creating a healthier relationship with food. That's free. Like, there's so many free resources on my website or on Instagram at Coach Josh Wood. You don't have to pay for anything. You could just get all the free resources and you're going to be in a better spot.
Just to make things easier, if you go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com. If you go to this episode, look right below the episode description. I will have all of the links that Josh just mentioned posted there for your convenience. And Josh, as we close, what is your challenge to dads feeling discouraged and struggling physically or emotional to take those first steps?
Take a minute, sit down, get a piece of paper, write out all the things you need to do and number them in order of how important they are. You have to understand your priorities. If you don't know where your priorities lie, you're going to keep trying to do everything at the same time, and everything you do is going to suck. You need to understand what's most important and nail that. get that right first, and then move on to the next thing.
Josh, it has been absolutely an honor having you on the Fatherhood Challenge. Thank you so much for being here and encouraging dads to step up and to take those first steps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.
I'd like to pause and thank our proud sponsor of the Fatherhood Challenge, Zencastr. If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcast production platform, you can create your podcast all in one place and distribute to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations. But the reason I personally use and trust them with the production of this syndicated radio program is their professional broadcast quality sound. There is no better time than now to start your podcast using Zencastr for all your needs. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code FATHERHOOD, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.